Climate change impacts are seen everywhere on Earth today. Mountainous regions are the source of most rivers. They are invaluable key providers of water. It is the case of the biggest mountain range worldwide, the Himalayas. Nepal is a small state country between two giants, China, Tibet in the north, and India in the east, south, and west. Located north of Nepal in the Himalayas, Upper Mustang is a distinctive administrative territory made of the Kali-Gandaki River upper valley. Upper Mustang is a grandiose and spiritual environment where Tibetan Buddhism is inscribed in the landscape through caves, shorten, mani walls or prayer walls, prayer flags, dzong or towers. As you can see, a shorten here and a grandiose landscape. And here some smaller shorten punctuating the landscape. Upper Mustang has its own culture. Its language is close to Tibetan. Its religion is a mix of Tibetan Buddhism and pagan rituals called Bompo. It celebrates various festivals every year, and its intangible cultural heritage is thriving. Buddhism permeates not only the landscape, but every moment of daily life. Here in this photograph is the TG festival celebrated every year in May. Here is the traditional making of a sound mandala, a collective spiritual exercise of meditation and concentration performed by lamas. Lopa people, the inhabitants of Upper Mustang, are usually involved in agriculture, but they also participate in the restoration of their temples, also a kind of spiritual exercise for laymen. Lopa people are well aware about tourists' behavior and keen to prevent any misbehavior. Access to Upper Mustang is difficult. It takes 2 or 3 days to travel up from Kathmandu, 250 kilometers away, by car. A sand and gravel road has brought modernity since 2012. Until this date, one needed almost a week to reach the capital of Upper Mustang, Lomantang, from Kathmandu. One could drive until Jomsom, but had to walk or ride after. The trail is really difficult and may be dangerous. One has to cross rivers, stones may fall, and the journey may be hazardous in one of the deepest gorges on Earth. A blacktop road is planned to connect with the Chinese border, but it is still under construction. Increasing rainfalls may weaken the slopes and produce landslides. The main river, the Kali-Gandaki, cannot be crossed after 11 a.m. as glaciers melt too much in the sun and the water level becomes too high to be crossed. This is where the Kali-Gandaki River meets its first tributary, an impressive landscape. The climate of Upper Mustang is very harsh. Daily, there are strong winds starting from around 11 a.m. This prevents airplane traffic at Jomsom Airport to be organized after 11 a.m. Until the following morning, and this can be fatal in case of emergency evacuation. The Annapurna and Dhaulagiri mountain ranges are among the highest on Earth, that is above 6,000 meters above sea level, and provide spectacular views. Landscapes are semi-arid. Winds are eroding mountains severely. They produce dust swirls and sometimes dust storms. Here is an example of the eroded mineral landscape of Upper Mustang with the Annapurna mountain range in the background. Fauna and flora are mainly endemic. One may meet a rare kind of antelope, the blue sheep or baral, which can easily climb in steep slopes. The famous snow leopard is the emblem of this fragile ecosystem, although quite invisible and in danger of extinction. Spring, snow melting and rainfalls are followed by spectacular flower bloom everywhere. Cattle is composed of yaks, horses, goats, and zo, which is a hybrid of cows and yaks. Agriculture is extremely difficult under these harsh conditions. It shapes the landscape as fields are green patches, especially in springtime. The main crops are barley, buckwheat, and potatoes. This is a typical Upper Mustang landscape, green cultivated field patches and orchards below, eroded mountains in the middle, and the highest mountains, usually snowy, in the rear. This is a spring view of irrigated barley fields facing steep cliffs beyond the Kaligandaki River in Chuksong. Villages are built above the cultivated areas, below the dry mountains which stop winds and protect them. Irrigation systems are extremely ingenious, recuperating water from the nearby melting glaciers. However, the rate at which these glaciers melt is accelerating, and it is a major concern. The impact of climate change on these glaciers at this altitude has not been studied so far. Millions of people depend on the Himalaya mountain range for drinking water. Here are the remains of a medieval fort abandoned in the 17th century for lack of water. The cultural identity of Upper Mustang is distinctive through its architecture. As long as one goes up, trees disappear and wood becomes a rare and precious building material. At 3,000 meters above sea level, the vernacular earthen architecture does not use wood for construction very often. Wood is mostly dedicated to religious buildings, showing how precious it is. This is the post office building of Lomontong, the capital of the former kingdom of Upper Mustang. Walls are topped with moss to absorb humidity from snow or rainfalls. However, this technique can no longer absorb the increasing snow and rainfalls due to climate change. Inhabitants can easily remove snow to avoid leakage, but this is not feasible with rainwater. This threatens the traditional earthen structure of houses, and new techniques are currently adopted, mixing modern materials as polyethylene sheets, for example. Juniper is also stored on roofs. It is used with cattle dung for heating and cooking. Roofs are flat, terraces are used for drying grain or by women to weave wool in the sun, as here in the middle of this photograph. Here is a view of the medieval fortified walled city of Lomantang, capital of the former kingdom of Upper Mustang. Inscribed in the Nepalese tentative list for future World Heritage nomination, it lies at 3,900 meters above sea level. Founded in the 15th century, it was a kingdom until recently. Upper Mustang being a border area with Tibet and China, after the flight of the Dalai Lama in 1959, it was closed during 30 years from 1962 to 1992. For this reason, it remains today a unique testimony of Sakyapa Buddhism. The original city had a square shaped in the shape of a mandala mapping. In the 18th century, a new part was added. Thereafter, it became L-shaped. It counts 3 monasteries, Tupchen and Champalakang from 15th century and Chodilakang from the 18th century, as well as a royal palace, a prayer fortified wall, and various shoten inside and outside the walled city. Civic buildings are painted in white clay, while religious ones are covered with red clay every year. This is a view from the roof of Tupchen Lakang Monastery, showing the extremely arid environment of the walled city. One of the distinctive features of Lomantang is its fortified wall, the Chagri wall, punctuated with 13 zong rectangular towers. One main gate was the unique access until 1960. This gate used to be closed every night to protect the city from potential enemies or devils. This earthen wall is spiritually significant as it materializes the path for daily circumambulation and prayers outside. Here is one of the massive zong towers overlooking the landscape. The base of the Chagri wall is made of river pebbles assembled without mortar. Its upper parts are made of rammed clay and mud bricks called pop. This is a view of Jampalakang Monastery, which is one of the highest buildings in the city. Dwellings are protected from the winds by the fortified wall. There is a vertical distribution of space. The ground floor is dedicated to cattle. A patio distributes light across the dwelling. It may be covered with glass for additional insulation. The upper floor is dedicated to human habitat, and the flat roof level for storage of juniper bush, buckwheat grains, and weaving devices. It can be accessed by a ladder carved in a wood trunk. There are many current threats against Lomantang. One of them is the opening of around 27 gates through the fortified wall in recent years. This caused various collapses in 1990, 1993, and 2003. Here is one of the latest openings to access Chodegompa Monastery by car directly from outside the city. Furthermore, one witnesses as a secondary threat an urban expansion outside the fortified wall, which has a visual and physical impact on this cultural landscape. Traditional building techniques and know-how, such as carpentry and earthen masonry, are being lost. In 2015, 2 major earthquakes on 25th of April and 5th of May impacted the valley of Kathmandu, but also Low Mantang and Upper Mustang. In the former royal palace, a wall collapsed. It could not be safely inhabited any longer and was restored using rammed earth technique in 2019. A shorten inside the city was partly damaged. After this natural disaster, it became urgent to start an inventory of public cultural heritage. This was organized in 2019 as a participatory exercise of the whole community. This inventory exercise documented the cultural monuments which constitute the uniqueness of this city. The urban sprawl in the city surroundings has mostly to do with tourism. Here is a luxury hotel recently built in costly concrete, imitating the local vernacular architecture. New buildings are located outside the fortified wall. They combine earthen architecture with modern techniques like cement, concrete pillars, polythene sheets to cover roofs before adding clay, corrugated iron used to cover wall tops instead of pang or moss. Here on the left, we can see the mix of concrete pillars with local stones, and on the right-hand side, sun-dried clay bricks. And here, the use of birch wood for window frames. Traditional building techniques should be preserved, taught, and transmitted. Environment provides affordable, available, and sustainable building materials which are compatible with modernity, provided that Lopa people's mentality accepts this conception. Traditional building materials are better adapted to the harshness of climate and extreme temperature differences between day and night, summer and winter. One should encourage a better understanding and recognition of the interdependence of traditional architecture with the environment. For example, river pebbles, clay, moss, or juniper by local and national authorities. In conclusion, if climate change continues to increase, water will certainly become a crucial issue, a life and death issue. Life cannot be sustained without water. If glaciers are not providing water any longer, Upper Mustang will become a high-altitude desert. The unique culture and religion of this Nepalese province will disappear forever. What will become its population? Already, many members of Upper Mustang community migrate to the USA or to the Gulf states, forced by unemployment or attracted by better living conditions. Cultures are similar to ecosystems. If one culture disappears, it is the global cultural ecosystem which is impoverished and imbalanced. Climate change has many impacts, some natural, some economic, but the human and cultural impacts are the most concerning ones. Thank you very much for your attention.